Hello, welcome back to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. Uh, if you remember last uh, presentation, I was reading out of Imagination, a book that says "What If," and I had just finished reading *The Man and the Angel*, a fantasy story I'd written, short one, but it's enjoyable nonetheless. My heart was moved to write that after my wife had passed away, and I wrote shortly after that another short story, but this is not a fiction story. This is a true story. It's called The Motorcycle Gang. It's an encounter in Calaveras County, California. And if you're familiar at all with Mark Twain, you remember he wrote a story that involved Calaveras County, California. And we'll talk about that when we get to there. But I told you when I was closing last time that I was going to show you the book that I was talking about from the seminar that I used to do that told people how to write and publish their own books through Amazon, the easiest place in the world to do it. And the title of this book is How to Publish Yourself by Curtis Jones. And the subtitle, It's All About Control. And believe me, you can do this with having publishing companies publish you. When they decide there isn't enough books sold, then it goes out of print and they can't order it anymore. But thank goodness the way Amazon is set up, I don't sell a whole lot of books, but I sell books on a regular basis. So a publishing house probably wouldn't keep my books available, but Amazon keeps my books available. They're available in ebook, in paperback, and some of them are in hardback. And not only do I have books, I also have journals and things like that up on my site in Amazon that I published. But before we get started to the story here, uh, if you enjoy the stories I present, you can click the like button. I don't know which corner it's in. It's in one of the top corners, or probably on the left side as you're looking at the screen. But you can also click the subscribe button and click on the bell. You'll be notified every time something is published. If you hit the like button, you could also hit the share buttons and share my stories as they're told to your friends and loved ones you think might enjoy these things. So let's get started with Imagination, Chapter 5, The Motorcycle Gang. This was when I was dating who became my wife, Stephanie, and really, really loved that gal. So it goes like this: The Motorcycle Gang, an encounter in Calaveras County, California. We lived in the Central Valley. She lived in Turlock, I lived in Modesto, and we went up to the mountains to see a cave that her mother's boyfriend owned. And he told us we'd go up there and go look at it. If we wanted to go uh, dig for gold, it was okay with him. So I had visions of riches, but it wasn't what I thought it would be when we went up there. I'll tell you that as we go through this. Now, my girlfriend, Miss Stephanie, and I had been dating for a few months when we decided we wanted to go to the Sierra Nevada mountains to a deserted gold mine. It belonged to Stephanie's mother's boyfriend. He had given us permission to visit there. We planned the trip for a couple of weeks and gathered an ice chest to bring a picnic lunch and some soft drinks. I had put an old quilt in the back seat to spread on the ground for our lunch. We brought light jackets because early spring in the mountains were much cooler than the valley where we lived. As the morning of our departure arrived, we were very excited. It looked to be the best date we had ever been on. I had serviced the car the night before, so all I needed to do was to pick up Miss Stephanie and go. We had talked on the phone the night before, and I could hear the excitement in her voice as well. We started early for us. It was about 6:30 when I got there. Miss Stephanie was sitting on the porch waiting for me when I pulled up. Every time I saw her, she looked like a vision to me. Today, she wore a pair of green pedal pushers, a silky green blouse, and a green French hat. I think it's called a beret. Every time I saw her, she looked like a vision. She looked ready for anything. I had a flash vision of her and me walking arm in arm, and I had to smile. I parked and walked to the porch to escort Miss Stephanie to the car. The scenery on the drive up was wonderful. We drove by a grand boulder that stood on a edge of a cliff that dropped 30 feet to a small river. The top of the great boulder had a sign that read, "This is Lover's Leap." I guess every state has some of those. I don't know if anyone ever jumped from this rock, but it was a cool place to stop and impress my date. There was a small stand just before we got to French Camp. It was a good place to get an apple cider. French Camp was one of the old prospector campsites along the highway. It had become a small town by 1967 when we were there. The mine was only another 15 miles. We arrived at the cave about 11 a.m. and we spread the quilt in a smooth, level spot and left our jackets there and walked to the mine entrance. It was very dark inside after being in the bright sunlight. I had thought of everything except a flashlight to see when we went inside. There was a couple of small candles in a box on the wall as we entered. I lit them with my cigarette lighter. We didn't go in very far because it was wet and water on the floor and it was a little scary to boot. Dust was falling from the roof of that cave, and we thought better of going in very deep. The air felt cold and damp and smelled musty. We had only gone in about 75 feet, and the light from the sun had faded until the light of the candles seemed inadequate for the task. We turned and started back to the opening, and as we walked, I said, "Did you hear that? It sounded like a mountain lion." And at that, Stephanie bolted to the exit as fast as she could run in the dim light, and she dropped her candle and it went out. I began to laugh and told her I was joking, and she slowed her pace and still got outside before me. I picked up the candles and I left them in the little box where we had found them. When I reached the sunlight, she pinched me on the shoulder and said that was not funny. But her good nature proved that she was not mad at me either. Our feet were damp, and so when we got to the blanket, we took our shoes off and let the sun dry them. I had the ice chest there, and we enjoyed our lunch. We spent a good half hour eating and talking as we watched the nature all around us. Stephanie put the residue in the ice chest and laid it back with my arm, or I lay back with my arms raised and my hands interlocked behind my head. Stephanie laid her head on my arm, and we cuddled there for a long time. It was as close to bliss as I had ever been. We talked for a while, and because the valley we were in was so deep, the sunlight was moving up the hill across from us. We packed up and loaded into the car to start our trip home. We had decided this was the most fun we had ever had on a date. We drove about a mile on a little dirt road until we came to the highway. There seemed to be several motorcycles on the highway. As we came to the outskirts of town, there were many more motorcycles. I began to drive through town, and we met a group of riders that filled the street from sidewalk to sidewalk. I pulled into a car wash that was conveniently located where I needed it to be. The riders were wearing black leather jackets and sleeveless vests. Some had chains wrapped around their waists. Others had great knives on their back. All had tattoos that gave an air of danger to them. They all had patches on their backs that named their group as Hell's Angels. Miss Stephanie and I had been to the movies that depicted this group as evil incarnate. In the movies, they had killed, raped, pillaged every little town that they entered. We began to think that was what was about to happen here, and that we were in danger. As we pulled in, we noticed that there were several riders in this lot as well. I told Stephanie to lock her door and try not to look at them if she could avoid it. Three rode around our car a couple of times and made me very nervous. The joy and pleasant memories had suddenly vanished, and we were getting into a fight or flight mode. I think I was more frightened than Miss Stephanie was, but I could tell she was uncomfortable as well. We played an 8-track tape of Simon and Garfunkel as we faced each other. We tried not to garner any attention from the band of wild looking men that had overtaken this little town. As the main group of riders had passed the driveway, we pulled on the road again. As the main group of riders had passed the driveway, we pulled on the road again and got out of town as fast as I could get there. I learned later that they had come for the Calaveras County Frog Jump that was conducted every year as a celebration of Mark Twain's story. As we drove home, I was quiet and a little embarrassed that I was afraid. I felt like she might think that I couldn't take care of her if things got out of hand. She didn't she didn't talk very much either. I wasn't sure why, but the trip home was almost uneventful. We never spoke of the date in any detail after that. I thought it was a wonderful date. I had such a good time, as I'm sure Miss Stephanie did, but the emotional challenge at the end of the date was so strong that it canceled the joy and pleasure that abounded that very special day. I don't think we ever did that or anything like that again while we were dating. After we were married, we did many things like that until we began to have kids. One night we had gone to bed at 10 o'clock and talked ourselves into getting up at midnight and going to San Francisco to have dinner with one of her stepfathers. It was 100 miles. Within a year, we had to stop doing such things because we had a son, and a wonderful thing that was as well. When I come back to presenting stories, I will be reading chapter 6. It's a story with a little bit of truth and a lot of imagination. It's called The Curse That Blessed a Boy, and we will do that one when I come back. If you like what you see and hear here, and you would like to share it with your friends, hit the share button. It will be uh, sent. Link will be sent to them so they can watch it too and enjoy it. It's most of my stories have a fair amount of emotion and excitement in them. This will be almost 40 pages for the next one, so it'll be a little bit longer story when I do that one. I hope you enjoyed this one. Uh, this is my web page, curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com. There's links to go buy the books at those places, but it'll explain each book and tell some detail about what the book's about. And this is my author page on Facebook, Curtis Jones author page. God bless you and keep you safe. And till we meet again and I read you another story, I hope you enjoy them and like them. If you'll like this thing, it will help me stay on YouTube.